Okay, I'm really not sure how to start this video because this is gonna sound like I'm going back to a bad ex or some type of bad habit or something like that. But I guess I'll start out by saying that I'm gonna give Linux another try. I keep on umming and ahhing and going backwards and forwards between Linux and Windows, and I think at this point I'm just having a more enjoyable and interested experience and investment in Linux rather than Windows at the moment. So I'm giving it another try. I'm on Fedora at the moment, Fedora 44, using the Plasma Desktop KDE version. This version's been really good for this main rig here that I have. Everything that's being recorded at the moment and pretty much going forward for all these streams and videos and items like that I'll make will all be done through Fedora and through the Linux system. So I'm pretty keen to test it out, run it through, and put it through its paces. It should be interesting. I've already had a few steep learning curves with installing Fedora on this system in particular. Apologies, I'm still a bit sick at the moment, so you'll have to bear with me, but if you are using an NVIDIA GPU for Fedora, the best thing that you can do, or one of the things you should do before installing a bunch of different security updates and other updates and stuff like that from the Discover app, is to go to the settings area and tick on the NVIDIA driver source. Now, that is proprietary software, so it's kind of like, you know, going to become a vegan and then, you know, eating a hamburger every 2 weeks. It doesn't quite it doesn't quite make sense in the open source philosophy side of things, but if you do just want to get your rig going, that is the way to do it. And in this case, it's what I've done for the purposes of this. There are open source Nuva drivers or something along those lines, but I haven't gone down that road for this instance, at least not at this period of time. So at the moment, I'm using the NVIDIA drivers through proprietary software like that. So just do keep that in mind. So everything that I guess I do on Linux will be, you know, take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because, you know, I'm a bit flip-floppy when it comes to operating system usage. And yeah, goodness knows, next week I'll probably be back on CachyOS, or the next week after that I'll probably be on PicoOS, who knows. I've also been trying out Ubuntu in my spare time as well. That's been pretty good. The GNOME desktop environment, I think I have some struggles with, especially with multi-monitor setups like the one I have, but Ubuntu's GNOME tweaks and the setup for the standard operating system, at the very least, it does a pretty good job of both picking up the NVIDIA drivers during the install and setting up appropriately for multi-monitor setups. So kudos to the team there for setting it up in such a way that I didn't have the same issues with other GNOME desktop environments on other operating systems like Pika, for example, where multi-monitor items were not quite as good, and, you know, the game was starting on a completely different monitor that I didn't want it to, and there was no way to change it to set a particular monitor as default for every single game. It was a bit of a mess. So I've been around the block and tried a whole bunch of operating systems. But yeah, ultimately I've landed on Fedora and Bazzite being the operating system for the ROG Ally that I still have and still continue to get a lot more use out of now with Bazzite on there. I've been finding sort of mixed results with different games so far on both Fedora and Bazzite. I guess starting off with Bazzite, with a game like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, for example, where it's a very heavily, you know, graphically intensive single player title where you're sort of jumping back and forward between a lot of environments and stuff like that. And, you know, it was like the PS5's, you know, big SSD push where it was like, this technology is only capable on a PS5. And then it came out to PC and it was fine. But anyway, if you do want to get more out of your ROG Ally, now I'm talking the original ROG Ally, not the Asus, you know, ROG Ally X or Xbox ROG Ally X 5000, whatever. I'm talking the one that came out in 2023. If you do find that you're not quite getting as much as what you expect to get out of your ROG Ally, I would strongly consider giving Bazzite a try. CashOS also has a handheld version as well, but you will find that there will be a lot of tinkering to get it to the way that, or I guess in my case, the way that I wanted it, because I wanted a whole bunch of controls in terms of like TDP and, you know, setting, you know, different wattages for different power scenarios, like being plugged in at the wall or on battery, you know, stuff like that. So I would still strongly consider using or going down the road of Bazzite, or at least giving it a go, dual booting if that so tickles your fancy. I guess in terms of what I've ended up on the main rig here, which is Fedora, I ultimately ended up with that because of Bazzite, I guess, in a way, because Bazzite is essentially there is a correct term for this, it's a fork, I believe. I was going to call it an offshoot, but I believe the correct term is a fork of Fedora. So a lot of the same sort of expected behaviors and the expected, you know, desktop environment behaviors and items like that, they're all very, very similar. The main difference between the two is one is immutable, being Bazzite, and one is not, which is Fedora. So I figured that I was going to be tinkering a lot more with the main rig here, so I was going to go down the route of not having an immutable system, so I can faff around with it a little bit more and potentially get a bit more use out of the system that I have, which I've just had had a look at it, and I ran a command for checking how old the hardware and items like that were in it, and I can't believe it, but the actual unit itself seems to be about 6 years old from what I remember. I think 6 and a bit years old, so it's done pretty well, and I seem to be getting a bit more out of it using Fedora as well. I've been playing Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6, which are pretty demanding games in terms of computing resources, and a Tekken 8, especially on Windows, I do remember having a lot of issues when I did play on it last. Now, mind you, this is probably going back months now since I last touched Tekken 8 on a Windows computer, so take this with a bit of grain of salt, but it did seem to run a lot more smoother on Fedora with this main rig here rather than being on Windows. So that's just my personal anecdote. You can take it or leave it, but I just wanted to sort of, I guess, document my understanding and my thoughts on the subjects between using Linux and Windows and proprietary software and and where I was with that. Otherwise, yeah, I'll hopefully be able to do some more videos and streams and stuff like that. I think I've finally got everything set up, and as you can see here, all the rigging and all the items and stuff like that are all set up as well, which is great. I'm pretty keen to to try and take my mind off of how awful I feel at the moment, just to try and sort of distract myself and hopefully get over this sickness at some point or other. They seem to be coming down with a lot of things a bit more often, so that's been fun. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to tinkering around a little bit more and seeing how much I can still get out of this rig here. And yeah, I'm pretty keen to sort of share my opinions and thoughts and document them here. And yeah, that's probably about all I have for this video here. I guess I'm crawling back to the Linux side of things, so we'll see how long this lasts. Maybe it'll last a little bit longer this time. I have been enjoying myself and learning a lot about how Fedora works and how installing stuff works in different repositories and stuff like that. And yeah, I was seeing the praises of CachyOS a while ago, and I will still continue to sing about them, but the I'm gonna mess this up, but the AUR, or the all repository shenanigans that have happened recently with that whole repository potentially infecting computers, that really freaked me out. Like I really became skittish of CachyOS because it was based off of Arch, which does use that repository. Now, if you don't use any software from that repository, then you're fine. It's purely just software from there by the sounds of it. But even the possibility of that happening on the computers that I have was enough to basically force the switch over to a different operating system. So thus I've been sort of bouncing around and landed on Fedora. So that's a very long-winded way to say that I think Fedora is probably where I'm going to stick in terms of Linux operating system distributions, just in terms of its use, what I'm going to use it for, how easy I find it to use with KDE, the desktop environment, and yeah, it just seems to be the best for me. So obviously your mileage may vary if you are interested in going down the Linux road for yourself. Some things might work better for you on Fedora Linux, or some things might work just tremendously worse. I guess in comparison to something like Linux Mint, for example, which I've also used in the past, the audio problems that I had on that Linux distro are just simply non-existent on the ones that I've tried recently, being Kachy, Ubuntu, and now Fedora as well. So there are things like that to consider as well, and items to understand in terms of Pipewire and how that audio processing gets handled with that. But at the end of the day, there's only so much tinkering that one could be invested in before it starts becoming a chore and a bit of a hassle. And the majority of the Linux community are pretty good. There's a lot of great articles out there in terms of setting up. Like just the other day I had to set up the Xbox wireless dongle for some controllers that I wanted to hook up to a different computer, and there was a really good article from, I think it was the COPR forums, that sort of demonstrated the commands and the the conditions for installing firmware like that, especially because that is also proprietary as well. There were a few things that were completely wrong in it as well. Like there were no sudo commands at the start for installing the firmware. There was no indication to restart at a certain command, which fixed my issue, I think, on the third or fourth command when I was building the firmware, as it told me to do, and restarting seemed to help at that point. So if you're watching this and trying to get the Xbox wireless dongle to work in that sense, restart after building the package there. So just a heads up with that one. Yeah, goodness, what else? I think that's probably about it. Hopefully my damaged voice isn't too grating. I would like to continue or start making videos again on Linux, Fedora, and gaming, and how that works on the system as well. And, you know, items and stuff like that that I come across while using the Linux distro of my choice. And yeah, I think that's probably about all I have for real this time. Remember to go outside and tell your loved ones you love them. That's all I got for you. Bye bye!